All right, so Lyonel Strong, Master of Laws, Hand of the King, and crucially a character whose survival could have drastically altered the course of Westerosi history. In the main timeline, Larry's actions ensure his father's fiery demise at Harrenhal, paving the way for Otto Hightower's return and accelerating the descent into the Dance of the Dragons. But what if Lyonel, a seasoned player in the Game of Thrones, saw the writing on the wall? What if he recognized the bubbling cauldron of ambition and resentment brewing in King's Landing, and decided to take preventative measures? Let's rewind. Remember the tension, the barely veiled animosity between the Greens and the Blacks, the constant whispers and rumors swirling around Rhaenyra's children. Lyonel, more than most, was privy to all of it. He witnessed Alicent's growing paranoia, Larry's insidious manipulations, and Harwin's increasingly precarious position as Rhaenyra's protector, and more. He wasn't blind. He understood the danger. And crucially, he had a vested interest in averting disaster, not just for the realm, but for his own family. So instead of blindly returning to Harrenhal after the king grants him leave, Lyonel hesitates. He cites ongoing duties, unresolved matters of state, anything to delay his departure. He studies the faces around him, searching for clues for confirmation of his growing unease. He observes Alicent's barely concealed triumph at his impending absence, Larry's unsettlingly neutral expression, even Viserys' oblivious contentment. And in those observations, he finds his answer. He will not go to Harrenhal, not yet. Instead, he makes a different decision, one that will have profound consequences for the future of Westeros. He calls his sons, Harwin and Larys, into his chambers. The scene is private tense. Lyonel, ever the composed statesman, maintains a facade of calm, but his eyes betray his worry. He tells them of his change of plans. He will remain in King's Landing, he announces, to continue serving the king. Harwin, predictably, is concerned. He misses his family, his responsibilities at Harrenhal. But Lyonel dismisses his concerns. Harrenhal is well managed, he assures him. And besides, he adds, it would be beneficial for Harwin to return, to oversee matters personally, to strengthen the Strong's presence in the Riverlands. Larys, as always, says little. But Lyonel sees the flicker of understanding in his eyes. He knows Larys understands the real reason. The truth is, Lyonel is sending Harwin away to protect him. He sees the affection between Harwin and Rhaenyra, the unmistakable resemblance between Harwin and her sons. The rumors are already rampant. If Harwin remains in King's Landing, the whispers will only grow louder, the danger will only intensify. By sending him back to Harrenhal, Lyonel hopes to distance him from the princess, to quell the speculation, to safeguard his life. But Harwin can't travel alone. That would be too suspicious. And besides, Lyonel has another reason for sending Larys along. He needs to remove him from the court. He has watched Larry's influence over Alicent grow, his network of informants spread like a web. He knows Larys is ambitious, ruthless, and capable of anything. By sending him to Harrenhal, Lyonel hopes to limit his opportunities for mischief, to sever his connections, to keep him under control. Of course, he can't tell his sons the full truth. He can't admit his suspicions, his fears. He phrases it as a matter of family unity, of ensuring the Strongs are well represented in both King's Landing and Harrenhal. He suggests that Larry's unique talents would be better utilized in managing the family's affairs, in uncovering potential threats, in solidifying their position in the Riverlands. He paints a picture of a united front, a powerful dynasty working in harmony for the good of the realm. Harwin, though disappointed to be leaving Rhaenyra, accepts his father's decision. He sees the logic in it, the need to strengthen their family's position. He doesn't suspect the deeper motives, the underlying currents of fear and distrust. He bids his father farewell, promising to uphold the Strong name with honor and loyalty. Larys, however, sees through the facade. He understands his father's true intentions. He recognizes the subtle warning in his eyes, the unspoken threat in his words. He knows he is being exiled, banished from the center of power, but he doesn't protest. He doesn't argue. He simply nods, his expression unreadable. He knows that crossing his father directly would be foolish. For now, he'll play the dutiful son, bide his time, and wait for an opportunity to advance his own ambitions. And so Harwin and Larys depart for Harrenhal, leaving Lyonel behind in King's Landing. The city feels different now, quieter, more ominous. The air is thick with unspoken tensions, with hidden agendas. Lyonel knows he has made a difficult choice, a gamble that could have far-reaching consequences. But he believes it is the right choice, the only choice. He must protect his sons, preserve his family, and safeguard the realm, even if it means playing a dangerous game. With his sons gone, life at court continues outwardly much as before. The small council meetings proceed, the royal feasts are held, the political machinations continue. But beneath the surface, the undercurrents are stronger, the stakes are higher. Lyonel remains vigilant, watching, listening, anticipating. He is the hand of the king's most trusted advisor. He must use his position to maintain order, to prevent conflict, to guide the realm through the storm that is brewing. He finds himself increasingly at odds with Alicent. She is more assertive now, more demanding, more convinced of her own righteousness. She pushes for her son Aegon to be recognized as the rightful heir, undermining Rhaenyra's position at every turn. Lyonel resists her efforts subtly but firmly. He reminds her of the king's wishes, of the oath she swore, of the stability of the realm. He appeals to her sense of duty, her sense of honor, but he knows it is a losing battle. Alicent is too blinded by ambition, too consumed by fear. He also finds himself walking a tightrope between his loyalty to the king and his affection for his grandsons. He knows Rhaenyra's sons are not of royal blood, but he also sees their potential, their strength, their intelligence. He cares for them, he wants to protect them. But he also knows that their existence is a threat to the stability of the realm, a constant source of tension and conflict. He tries to reconcile these conflicting emotions, to find a way to support Rhaenyra without jeopardizing the kingdom. It's a delicate dance, a constant balancing act. Lyonel is a master of the game, but even he feels the strain. The weight of responsibility is heavy, the burden of knowledge is immense. He knows that the fate of Westeros rests, in part, on his shoulders, and he is determined to do everything in his power to prevent the realm from tearing itself apart. For a time, he succeeds. He manages to keep the peace, to maintain order, to hold the realm together. But the storm is still gathering. The dance of the dragons is still looming, and Lyonel knows that his efforts can only delay the inevitable. Sooner or later, the dam will break, and when it does, the consequences will be devastating. But for now, he continues to play his part, to navigate the treacherous waters of courtly intrigue, to protect his family, and to serve the king. He is Lyonel's strong hand of the king, and he will not falter. Not yet, because everything is about to get more intense. Even with Harwin gone, Rhaenyra still visits him, but it's different. No longer can she just be at the commander of the City Watch's side. Now it's more so her going out of the way to see him in Harrenhal. It's much more conspicuous, and those with a keen eye are not afraid to notice. The move doesn't work, and she still ends up producing her dark-haired son, with the king being none the wiser as he grows ever more sick. And the wheels of fate keep turning. Okay, so where were we? Yes, Lyonel strong, still kicking, still hand of the king, and still trying to keep the Targaryen train from completely derailing. Now, as we said, the death of Lena Velaryon hits Driftmark hard. Daemon's reaction, anyone who's read Fire and Blood or watched the show knows, is characteristically Daemon. Grief finds a strange outlet in that guy. But the waves it creates crash over everyone else, and that includes Rhaenyra and her sons. Now, in our altered timeline, the key difference is Harwin Strong's still around. And that makes a bigger difference than you might think, especially for Jace, Luke, and Joffrey. Remember how broken up Harwin's death left Jace in the original timeline? He loses. Well, in his mind anyway, he loses a father figure, someone who actually played with him and showed him affection. That's a big deal for a kid, especially asterisk one who's constantly hearing whispers about his parentage. So with Harwin still alive, that void isn't there. He's still commander of the City Watch, which means he's still around King's Landing. He can't exactly be openly paternal, obviously, but his presence is stabilizing. He's a rock for those boys in a way that, frankly, Daemon is. Daemon's a hurricane, Harwin's a sturdy oak. You get the picture. This doesn't mean Driftmark's a picnic, though. The funeral, the tension, the simmering resentment from the Velaryons, it's all still there. Corlys is grieving, Rhaenys is furious, and Vaemond, well, Vaemond's always looking for an angle, isn't he? Lena's death throws the succession of Driftmark into sharp relief. Who's going to inherit? Luke, Rhaenyra's second son, or Lena's daughters, Baela and Rhaena? And that, of course, brings the strong boy's legitimacy right back into the spotlight. It's the elephant in the room, only this elephant's wearing a Targaryen wig and riding a dragon. Aegon, naturally, still claims Vhagar because Aemond will always be Aemond. This sets the stage for the inevitable brawl in the dragon pit, the one that ends with Luke relieving Aemond of his eye. That scene, that brutal asterisk scene, it still happens. The animosity between the kids is just too strong, too deeply rooted to be avoided, even with Harwin alive. Now this is where Lyonel Strong really earns his hand of the King badge. In the aftermath of the fight, when Alicent demands an eye for an eye, when she's practically frothing at the mouth for Lucerys' eyeball, Lyonel is caught in the ultimate political and personal vice. Think about it. On one side, you've got Alicent, the queen, demanding justice, or rather, vengeance. She sees Luke as a bastard who maimed her son, and she wants blood. She wants to cripple Rhaenyra's line to undermine their claim to the throne. On the other side, you've got Rhaenyra, the princess of Dragonstone, heir to the Iron Throne, and the mother of Lucerys. And let's be honest, the woman whose sons are almost certainly fathered by Lyonel's son. Lyonel's sitting there, trying to maintain order in a room that's about to explode, knowing that whatever he says or does could have massive consequences for the realm, for his family, and for himself. It's a tightrope walk over a pit of vipers. Now, in the original timeline, Lyonel's already dead at this point. He doesn't have to navigate this minefield. But our Lyonel, he's got to play this perfectly. He can't openly side with Rhaenyra, not completely. If he does, he confirms all the whispers, throws his family's reputation into the mud, and gives Alicent all the ammunition she needs to push Aegon's claim. But he can't side with Alicent either. He can't condone the mutilation of a child, even a bastard child. It would be a step too far, a descent into barbarity that would shatter the already fragile peace of the realm. And let's not forget, Lucerys is his grandson, even if no one officially knows it. So what does he do? He does what any good hand of the king would do. He tries to de-escalate. He appeals to Viserys' sense of reason, to his desire for peace. He argues that further punishment will only fuel the flames of hatred, that it will poison the relationship between Rhaenyra and Alicent's families beyond repair. He points out subtly that Aemond provoked the attack, that he called Jace and Luke bastards, that he essentially asked for it. He doesn't excuse Lucerys' actions, but he frames them as a reaction to Aemond's cruelty. He uses his legal expertise, his years of experience in the court, to find a middle ground, a way to satisfy Alicent's thirst for vengeance without resorting to literal mutilation. Maybe a formal apology from Rhaenyra, maybe a temporary banishment from court for Lucerys, something that saves face without actually costing an eye. It's a delicate dance, and it doesn't entirely work. Alicent is still furious, still convinced that Rhaenyra is getting away with something. But Lyonel manages to prevent Viserys from ordering Luke's eye to be taken. He prevents the situation from spiraling completely out of control. And crucially, he buys Rhaenyra time. Time to regroup, time to plan her next move. Now let's talk about Rhaenyra and Daemon. The leaner Velaryon fake-out, that whole bizarre charade, it still happens. It's a necessary move for Rhaenyra politically. She needs to be free to marry Daemon to shore up her claim to the throne. And Daemon? Well, Daemon does what Daemon wants. He wants Rhaenyra, he wants power, and he's not going to let a little thing like a husband stand in his way. But here's where things get interesting. In the original timeline, Rhaenyra and Daemon marry relatively soon after Lynar's death. They're drawn to each other, like moths to a very dangerous flame. But in our altered timeline, there's a slight delay. Not a huge asterisk delay, mind you. We're not talking years, but maybe a few months. Why? Because Rhaenyra's not quite as desperate. She's still got Harwin around. He's not a replacement for Daemon, not by a long shot. But he's a reminder that she's not alone, that she's not completely reliant on Daemon's chaotic brand of support. Harwin's presence gives her pause, a moment to consider her options. Does she really want to jump headfirst into a marriage with Daemon, knowing the chaos it will unleash? Or is there another way? Ultimately, though, the pull of Daemon is too strong. He's the dragon, the danger, the forbidden fruit. And Rhaenyra, Well, Rhaenyra's never been one to resist temptation, has she? So they marry. They fly off to Dragonstone. They consummate their union in the fiery glow of dragon breath. The Targaryen love story continues, as twisted and dysfunctional as ever. But Lyonel Strong? He watches it all with a weary sigh. He knows that this marriage is going to cause problems, that it will only further inflame the tensions at court. But he also knows that there's nothing he can do to stop it. He's just the hand of the king, after all. He can't control the hearts of dragons. He can only try to manage the fallout. And trust me, there's going to be plenty asterisk of fallout. Alright, so let's dive into what happens next with Lyonel kicking around and Viserys' health steadily going downhill. With Otto Hightower cooling his heels back in Old Town, Lyonel Strong basically becomes the undisputed heavyweight champion of King's Landing politics. Think of it like this. Otto was the guy constantly whispering in Alicent's ear, pulling strings from behind the scenes. With him gone, Alicent still got power, sure, but she's lacking that strategic mastermind. And that leaves a power vacuum, which Lyonel, being the hand, is perfectly positioned to fill. Now, this doesn't mean Alicent becomes completely irrelevant. She's still the queen, she's still got influence, but she's more reactive than proactive. She's dealing with the day-to-day stuff, the royal dinners, the endless stream of petitioners, while Lyonel is looking at the bigger picture, the long-term stability of the realm. He's playing chess while she's playing checkers, if you catch my drift. And one of the first big chess moves he makes involves good old Vaemond Velaryon. Remember him. Corlys' ambitious, perpetually aggrieved younger brother. In the original timeline, with Corlys laid up with a fever and presumed to be on death's door, Vaemond sees his chance to pounce. He thinks he can convince Viserys, with Otto whispering sweet nothings in his ear, to bypass Lucerys and name him the heir to Driftmark. After all, from Vaemond's perspective, the Strong boys are nothing but bastards, and he's the rightful Velaryon heir. But with Lyonel running the show, Vaemond's got a much tougher sell. Lyonel isn't swayed by blood purity arguments, especially when they threaten to destabilize the succession. He understands that challenging Lucerys' claim is essentially throwing a grenade into the already fragile peace of the realm. So instead of letting Vaemond run amok, Lyonel intercepts him. He subtly discourages Vaemond from even making the trip to King's Landing in the first place. He might have a quiet word with Corlys' wife, Rhaenys, suggesting that she needs to keep her brother-in-law under control. He might even dispatch a few trusted men to Driftmark to keep an eye on Vaemond and make sure he doesn't get any funny ideas. The key here is subtlety. Lyonel doesn't want to start a full-blown war with House Velaryon. He just wants to prevent Vaemond from stirring up trouble that could lead to a succession crisis. He understands that the longer Vaemond keeps his mouth shut, the better it is for everyone. Now, this doesn't mean Vaemond completely gives up on his ambitions. He's still simmering with resentment, still convinced that he's the rightful heir to Driftmark. But he's smart enough to realize that now isn't the time to make his move. Lyonel's presence at court throws a wrench into his plans, and he's forced to bide his time, waiting for a more opportune moment. Maybe when Viserys finally kicks the bucket. Speaking of Viserys, let's talk about the elephant in the room, his failing health. The guy is basically rotting from the inside out, and everyone knows it's only a matter of time before he croaks. And as Viserys gets weaker, Lyonel gets stronger. Not in a malicious way, mind you. He's not trying to usurp the throne or anything like that, but he is stepping up to fill the void left by the king's declining faculties. He's making more decisions, handling more responsibilities, and generally keeping the kingdom running smoothly. He's basically the regent in all but name. And as he does so, he starts to see the writing on the wall. He knows that Viserys' death is going to trigger a succession crisis, no matter how much the king insists that Rhaenyra is his heir. He also knows that Rhaenyra's been spending most of her time on Dragonstone, away from court, away from the political machinations of King's Landing. And that's a problem. Because if Rhaenyra isn't present when Viserys dies, it's going to be much easier for Alicent and her supporters to seize the throne for Aegon. So Lyonel does something that might seem a little out of character, given his initial skepticism about Rhaenyra's claim. He urges her to return to King's Landing. He sends her a message, maybe through a trusted messenger, explaining the situation in no uncertain terms. He tells her that Viserys is failing, that the court is rife with intrigue, and that her presence is needed to secure her claim. Now, this is a crucial moment, because Lyonel isn't just thinking about Rhaenyra. He's thinking about the realm as a whole. He believes that a contested succession is going to tear the kingdom apart, and he wants to prevent that at all costs. He knows that Rhaenyra is the rightful heir, and he's willing to do whatever it takes to make sure she ascends to the Iron Throne peacefully. And that means putting aside his personal feelings, his initial doubts about a female ruler, and focusing on the bigger picture. He's prioritizing the stability of the realm over his own ambition, which, let's be honest, is pretty damn rare in Westeros. But there's more to it than just sending a message. Lyonel isn't just passively waiting for Rhaenyra to show up. He's actively working to prepare the ground for her arrival. He's subtly shifting the composition of the court, making sure that there are enough people in positions of power who will support Rhaenyra's claim. He might be subtly promoting officials who are known to be loyal to the Targaryens, or who are at least neutral in the succession dispute. He might be quietly demoting or sidelining those who are known to be Alicent's allies. He's basically playing a very delicate game of political maneuvering, trying to stack the deck in Rhaenyra's favor without openly antagonizing Alicent or triggering a civil war. Think of it like this: he's building a foundation of support for Rhaenyra brick by brick. He's ensuring that when she finally does arrive in King's Landing, she won't be walking into a hostile environment. She'll have allies in the small council, allies in the City Watch, allies throughout the Red Keep. And all of this is happening behind the scenes, in the shadows, away from the prying eyes of Alicent and her supporters. Lyonel is a master of subtlety, a master of political intrigue. He knows how to get things done without making too much noise, without attracting too much attention. He's a silent operator, a behind-the-scenes manipulator, and that's what makes him so effective. He might, for example, suggest to Viserys that certain positions need to be filled due to illness or unforeseen circumstances. He could then recommend individuals he knows are sympathetic to Rhaenyra's cause, framing it as simply ensuring the smooth functioning of the government. He also understands the importance of controlling the narrative. He makes sure that the official messages coming from the Red Keep are carefully worded, emphasizing Viserys' unwavering support for Rhaenyra as his heir. He uses his influence to shape public opinion, subtly reinforcing the idea that Rhaenyra's succession is inevitable and that any challenge to her claim would be an act of treason. This might involve using the royal scribes to create flattering portraits of Rhaenyra, or commissioning bards to write songs celebrating her virtues. It might even involve subtly spreading rumors about Aegon's incompetence or disinterest in ruling, further undermining his potential challenge to the throne. And all of this is done with a certain degree of finesse. Lyonel isn't heavy-handed or overt. He understands that subtlety is key. He's playing a long game, a game of patience and careful calculation. He knows that the fate of the realm hangs in the balance, and he's determined to do everything in his power to ensure a peaceful succession. So as Viserys' health continues to decline, Lyonel's influence continues to grow. He's becoming the de facto ruler of the realm, the man who's holding everything together. He's preventing crises, manipulating events, and preparing the ground for Rhaenyra's arrival. He's the unsung hero of this story, the man who's quietly working to avert a civil war. And the question is, will his efforts be enough? Will Rhaenyra arrive in time? Will she be able to capitalize on the foundation that Lyonel has built for her? And will Alicent and her supporters sit idly by while Rhaenyra ascends to the Iron Throne? Or will they make one last desperate attempt to seize power for Aegon? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain, with Lyonel strong at the helm, the game has changed. And the dance of the dragons, well, it might just be avoided altogether. For now. Alright, so the old king finally kicks the bucket. Viserys shuffles off this mortal coil, pops his clogs. You get the idea. The big question now becomes, what happens next? In the original timeline, this is where all hell breaks loose. Otto Hightower and the Greens, having spent years solidifying their position, spring into action, crowning Aegon in secret and throwing the realm into chaos. But with Lyonel Strong still alive and well, things play out very differently. Let's break it down. The single most important factor here is Otto Hightower's absence. He was the architect of the Green's power grab, the driving force behind Aegon's claim. Without him, Alicent is, well, she's Alicent. A woman of strong convictions, sure, but ultimately lacking the political savvy and ruthlessness to pull off a successful coup on her own. She's been playing the game for years, but Otto taught her the game. Without his guidance, she's basically just playing a hand of cards she doesn't fully understand. And let's be honest, even with Otto, Alicent's position was largely dependent on Viserys' taciturn nature and the ambiguity surrounding his true wishes. He never explicitly disinherited Rhaenyra, even though that's what the Greens wanted him to do. That ambiguity allowed Otto to maneuver, to interpret Viserys' words to his own advantage. But with Lyonel in charge, there's no ambiguity. Lyonel knows Viserys named Rhaenyra as his heir. He was there. He heard it. And he's not about to let some misunderstanding derail the succession. Think of it like this. Lyonel is the realm's most senior lawyer and he has drafted a contract. This contract states Rhaenyra is the heir. He has shown it to the king and the king has said yes. The king has not revoked it. Now imagine Otto Hightower comes along after the king's death and says, well, I think the king meant to change it, or I think the king changed it verbally. No, Lyonel knows the contract. He is going to uphold it. It is that simple. So what does Lyonel do? First and foremost, he controls the flow of information. He likely discovers Viserys' death before Alicent does, or at least is informed very quickly. This gives him a crucial head start. Instead of rushing to crown Aegon, he immediately secures the Red Keep, ensuring that key positions are held by loyalists. He might not be able to trust everyone, but he can ensure that the right people are in the right places to prevent any unforeseen circumstances. He also moves swiftly to summon Rhaenyra from Dragonstone. This is absolutely crucial. In the original timeline, the Greens had a significant advantage because Rhaenyra was away from King's Landing. This gave them time to consolidate their power and present her with a fait accompli asterisk. Lyonel won't make that mistake. He understands that speed is of the essence. A raven flies immediately to Dragonstone, informing Rhaenyra of her father's death and urging her to return to King's Landing without delay. The message will stress the need for a swift and peaceful transition of power, and it will subtly emphasize the importance of her presence to maintain order. It will also, discreetly, alert her to the potential for complications asterisk. Now, what about the other players? Let's start with Aegon. Honestly, Aegon is probably the least of Lyonel's concerns. He's simply not interested in ruling. He's a hedonist, a drunk, a layabout. He would much rather spend his days indulging in his vices than dealing with the responsibilities of being king. Even if Alicent tries to push him, it's unlikely he'll put up much of a fight. He might grumble, he might complain, but ultimately he'll probably go along with whatever offers him the least resistance. Lyonel knows this. He can see that Aegon is fundamentally weak, lacking the ambition and the willpower to seize the throne. So, Aegon becomes little more than a pawn in a game he doesn't even want to play. Aemond, however, is a different story. Aemond is ambitious, intelligent, and resentful. He craves power and he feels he's been denied what is rightfully his. He's also a skilled warrior and a dragon rider. Hagar, the largest and most powerful dragon in the world, is a very, very big stick. He represents a potential threat to Rhaenyra's reign, not necessarily immediately asterisk, but certainly down the line. He resents Rhaenyra. He resents her sons. He feels like he has been slighted, and he wants revenge. Lyonel is well aware of Aemond's simmering resentment. He knows that Aemond is a dangerous wild card. But for the moment, Aemond is also politically isolated. He lacks the support base to mount a serious challenge to Rhaenyra's succession. Most of the court is either loyal to Rhaenyra or, at the very least, willing to accept her as queen. Aemond's only real ally is Criston Cole, and Cole, without Otto's direction, is simply a skilled swordsman. He's a blunt instrument, not a political mastermind. The key difference here is that Lyonel is proactive. He doesn't wait for the Greens to make their move. He anticipates their actions, and he neutralizes them before they can gain momentum. He is playing chess while they are still trying to figure out how the pieces move. For example, Lyonel may move to subtly isolate Aemond, perhaps by assigning him to a distant command or by carefully cultivating relationships with potential allies who might otherwise be tempted to support him. He understands that Aemond's resentment is a powder keg, and he needs to prevent it from exploding. He is also careful not to push Aemond too hard. Openly antagonizing him would only fuel his anger and drive him to desperate measures. Instead, he uses a combination of subtle manipulation and calculated appeasement to keep Aemond in check for now. And what about the small council? Well, Lyonel, over the years, has been subtly shifting the composition of the council, replacing members who might be sympathetic to the Greens with individuals who are more loyal to Rhaenyra or, at the very least, more pragmatic. He understands that the small council is the engine of government, and he needs to ensure that it's running smoothly in support of Rhaenyra's claim. He's been playing the long game, quietly consolidating his power and preparing for this moment. He has also likely kept the Master of Coin on side through whatever means possible. Gold rules the realm, and without the Master of Coin, there is no realm. When Rhaenyra arrives in King's Landing, she finds a court that is ready to receive her as queen. There is no coronation ceremony in secret. There is no frantic scramble for support. There is no sudden violent seizure of power. Instead, there is a solemn and dignified transition of authority. Rhaenyra is proclaimed queen in the Great Hall of the Red Keep, surrounded by her loyal supporters. The lords and ladies of the realm swear fealty to her, one by one. The transition is smooth and seamless. The dance of the dragons has been averted for now. But it's important to remember that this is not a fairy tale ending. The seeds of conflict are still there. Aemond's resentment still simmers beneath the surface. The Greens may be subdued, but they are not defeated. And the fundamental issues that led to the Dance of the Dragons, the question of female succession, the simmering rivalry between the Targaryen factions, the ambition and lust for power, these issues have not disappeared. They have simply been postponed. Lyonel has bought Rhaenyra time, but he hasn't solved the underlying problems. He has created a fragile peace, a temporary truce in a long and bloody war. The Dance of the Dragons may have been averted, but the music hasn't stopped. It's just paused, waiting for the next opportunity to begin again, and it will. Because in Westeros, peace is always fleeting, and the Game of Thrones is never truly over. So Rhaenyra ascends the Iron Throne, a dance undanced for now. But the realm holds its breath, waiting for the inevitable storm.